Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're involved in real estate at all, you know these deals. They're huge, often the biggest financial moves anyone makes.
Absolutely.
And doing well isn't just, finding a good listing. It's really about operating like a pro, like a sophisticated investor, where every little detail counts. Your mindset, how you run the numbers, your tactics at the closing table, everything needs to be optimized.
That's exactly what this deep dive is about, equipping you with that professional edge. We're pulling together some really key ideas.
From where exactly?
Well, from all over, actually.
Yeah.
High-level investment thinking, stuff straight out of Wall Street.
Yeah.
But also blending that with behavioral psychology, some pretty stark legal warnings, and tactical negotiation moves.
Okay.
The goal here isn't just haggling better. It's about moving you towards, strategic deal mastery.
And we've got some fantastic source material for this. We're going to map things out, starting inside, right, with identity and efficiency.
Yeah, the inner game first.
Then moving out to the mechanics, the money side, leveraging equity, figuring out profit margin.
Crunching the numbers.
Right. And finally, how to actually close the deal using some advanced psychological tricks and legal maneuvering.
We really think synthesizing all this hidden knowledge, it's going to give you a real competitive advantage in your next transaction, a genuine edge.
Okay, let's kick things off then, starting with that inner architecture. Before we even whisper cap rate or covenant, the real work starts internally, on your own operating system, your identity.
Yes. The sources are just relentless on this. They keep coming back to it.
Which is?
That behavior, if it's incongruent, if it doesn't match your self-identity, it's just not going to last. It'll fail.
Right. It explains why so many New Year's resolutions crash and burn, doesn't it?
Totally. People try to bolt on new habits, budgeting, saving, whatever, but they haven't touched the underlying belief about themselves.
So if deep down you see yourself as what?
What?
A consumer.
Exactly. If your identity is fundamentally someone who consumes, then you're constantly going to sabotage your own efforts to earn or save or build wealth.
Because it feels wrong.
Your subconscious literally rebels against actions that feel, inauthentic.
Yeah.
Not you.
That makes sense. It's that internal tug of war. Intellectually, you might say, I want to be wealthy.
Right.
But if your core belief is more about deserving that immediate dopamine hit, the new phone, the fancy dinner,
The consumer identity wins out.
then you're always pulled back, pulled towards spending or just wasting time instead of using those resources to actually earn or build something, like equity.
So the actionable thing here, the thing you do, it's focusing on who you are committed to being.
Okay.
There's this philosophy that being your identity and doing your actions, they have to come before the having, before the results, the wealth.
So for someone in real estate.
It means shifting that internal story.
Yeah.
Not just, I dream about financial events. No.
Yeah.
It's, I am a capital allocator. I operate strategically. That's the identity.
And you'd see that identity playing out in tiny ways day to day.
Absolutely. A consumer looks at free time and thinks, great, time for Netflix.
But a builder, the investor identity.
They see that same free time as an opportunity. Source materials. Analyze a new deal. Call a potential lender.
The identity change has to happen first. Then the actions follow more naturally. Less like a constant battle.
Precisely. It stops feeling like such a struggle.
Okay, so identity is locked in. What's next? The sources talk about intense focus, hustle.
Yeah, they use that word hustle. And they're pretty blunt about it. They talk about finding that line between being dedicated and being obsessed. And then, frankly, just trampling right over it. Especially when you're first starting growing a business. You have to commit. Find the time.
And there's no excuse for not finding the time, is there? When you break down the week.
Not really. Look at the math. 168 hours in a week.
Okay.
Say you have a demanding day job. That's maybe 40 hours. You sleep, let's say, a healthy 50 hours.
Right.
You're still left with 78 free hours. 78.
So when people say, I don't have time for a side hustle.
They're basically admitting they prioritize 78 hours of other stuff. Lower value activities. PV, scrolling social media, long commutes, errands that don't really move the needle.
Prioritizing that over building wealth.
Exactly. So the challenge isn't finding time, it's optimizing the time you already have.
Which leads to this idea of focusing on the vital few activities, like in ninja selling.
Right. You have to figure out where your effort gives you the biggest bang for your buck, the highest return.
And the data here is pretty stark. On conversion ratios specifically, where should an investor focus those 78 hours?
Well, definitely not on cold direct mail. The numbers are brutal. You need something like 2,000 mailers
2,000.
to get maybe one lead that actually turns into a deal. Cold internet leads. A bit better, maybe 1,600 to 1.
Wow. The cost, just in time and money, must be astronomical for those.
It really is. Very low quality sources. But then you look at the other end of the spectrum,
Like,
past sellers, people you've worked with before, maybe as their agent or you bought from them. They convert at something like 4 to 1.
4 to 1. That's massive.
And referrals, even better. Referrals convert at 3 to 2. Almost guaranteed business.
So the big insight here, it's not about working harder on junk leads.
No. The most successful, efficient investors, they focus their time, their capital on nurturing the systems that produce those 4.1 or 3.2 conversions.
Which means
Prioritizing relationships, maintaining your reputation, making sure you deliver amazing service so people want to work with you again or refer you. You stop chasing those impossible odds.
okay, makes sense. And to ensure those high-value tasks actually get done, we need to talk habits. Implementation intentions.
Yeah, because our brains love distractions, right?
Yeah.
We're experts at rationalizing, putting things out. Oh, I'll do it later.
Implementation intentions are the cure for that vagueness.
Pretty much. Instead of a fuzzy goal like, I'll follow up on leads this week, you get super specific. You create a trigger. If it is 7:00 p.m. on Tuesday, that's the when. I will be in my home office, that's the where. Contacting my top 5 past clients, that's the what.
That specificity makes it harder to wiggle out of.
Much harder. You've pre-decided. It bypasses the do I feel like it question.
And there's another psychological piece too, right? The gap between the short-term pain of doing the work
The hustle?
and the long-term reward of actually getting wealthy, which can feel really far away.
Absolutely. Our brains are wired for immediate gratification. That's the challenge.
So how do you bridge that gap?
While you're waiting for the big payoff, the wealth, to build up in the background, you have to engineer small, immediate rewards for sticking to your habits.
Little wins.
Exactly. A 5-minute break, doing something you enjoy, a really good cup of coffee after you make those calls, even just consciously acknowledging the feeling of accomplishment.
That short-term feedback loop keeps the habit going.
It keeps it sticky. It provides the immediate reward the brain craves,
Yeah.
which makes it much more likely you'll keep doing the thing that leads to the delectable long-term payoff.
All right, so we've covered the inner game. Mindset, efficiency, habits. Let's pivot now to the numbers, the quantifiable stuff, financial analysis.
Okay.
And we actually start with some higher-level investment philosophy. It might seem like it's about the stock market initially, but the lessons are critical for real estate too.
Right. We should definitely touch on the efficiency argument for index funds. It's pretty compelling.
Why is that?
Well, for most people, the data overwhelmingly shows index funds tend to beat actively managed funds over time.
Not because the managers are bad.
Not necessarily. It's mostly down to the math. The drag from higher fees and higher trading costs in active funds.
Okay, so fees. How much difference are we talking?
It can be huge. An actively managed fund might charge, say, 1% a year. A low-cost index fund could be down at 120th of 1%.
Wow.
That small difference compounded year after year. It adds up massively. Plus, active funds often have crazy high turnover, like 100%.
Meaning they sell everything and buy new stuff every year.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And all that trading racks up significant costs that eat into returns.
So, bringing that back to real estate, why should an investor care about stock fund fees?
Because the principle is identical when you're looking at partners or, say, syndication deals.
Ah, okay. Be wary of high fees and churn.
Exactly. Be super suspicious if a sponsor is constantly buying and selling properties, or if their management fees seem excessive. That financial drag will erode your returns, just like it does in the stock market. Often, the simpler, lower-cost buy-and-hold strategy wins out.
Makes sense. And sticking with strategies, let's talk GARP, growth at a reasonable price.
Right. GARP. It's not just about finding the absolute cheapest thing out there.
What is it then?
It's about looking past the initial price tag. In the stock world, it might mean paying a price-to-earnings ratio that's a little higher than average.
If what?
If the company's growth prospects look significantly better than average, exponentially better even, you're essentially paying a small premium for what looks like quality and strong future growth.
And how does that GARP idea apply to buying property?
It translates directly to how you analyze a market. You might pay a slightly higher price, which means a lower initial cap rate or yield, for a property if it's in a specific neighborhood, a micromarket. That's showing clear signs of taking off.
Like what signs?
Accelerating job growth, new infrastructure projects coming in, really low days on market for listings in that area.
Okay.
You're betting that the growth potential, the G in DRARP, will quickly make that slightly higher purchase price look like a bargain down the road.
Got it. What about bonds? The sources mention high yield or junk bonds.
Yeah, briefly. Junk bonds, lower credit quality stuff, they typically pay out 1 or 2% more in yield than safer investment-grade bonds.
But they're riskier, right? Higher chance of default.
Definitely riskier. But for investors who understand diversification, they can have a place.
How so?
Well, the interesting point from the sources is about managing that risk.
Yeah.
If you build a really diversified portfolio of these junk bonds, lots of different ones,
Okay.
even if you assume, say, a 1% default rate, meaning 1 out of 100, just goes bust.
Yeah.
The overall net return from the whole portfolio can still end up being similar to, or sometimes even better than, what you'd get from high-quality bonds.
So the lesson is diversification helps absorb shocks.
Exactly. Which is crucial for real estate investors, too, who sometimes get way too concentrated in just 1 or 2 properties. Spread the risk.
Okay, good point. Now let's really zoom in on pure real estate finance tools, starting with leveraging equity. This seems huge.
Oh, it's immense. The power of leveraging equity, especially with the tax advantages, it's probably the biggest hidden wealth-building engine in property investing.
Walk us through that. Why is pulling cash out via a refinance so much better than just selling the place?
It comes down to how the IRS views the money. Tax law.
Okay.
When you sell a property and make a profit, that profit gets taxed. Capital gains tax.
Right.
But when you do a cash-out refinance, the money you pull out isn't seen as profit. It's classified as loan proceeds. It's debt.
And debt isn't taxed as income.
Exactly. So that cash you pull out is entirely tax-free.
Let's put numbers on that. Say I bought a place for $100K cash. It appreciates, maybe through the market or work I did, up to $300K.
Huh?
If I sell it, I've got a $200K gain to pay taxes on.
Correct. Significant tax bill.
But if I refinance it instead, maybe get a new loan for 70% of the value, so $210. I pay off the original imaginary $100K loan, and I walk away with $110K cash.
Or if you owned it free and clear, you could potentially pull out, say, $200K cash based on the $300K value.
Right, and that $200K cash in my pocket
Is completely tax-free. Money you can immediately take and put into your next deal. Roll it over.
And there's another benefit too, right? The mortgage interest.
Yes. The interest you pay on that new, larger mortgage, that's generally deductible against the rental income the property generates. So you get tax-free cash out and an ongoing tax deduction.
Wow, okay, that's a double win. No wonder pros love the cash out refi. It lets you recycle capital and just keep growing the portfolio.
It's a cornerstone strategy for building long-term wealth in real estate.
Okay, sticking with financing, let's quickly define some options. HELOCs first. Home equity line of credit.
Right. Each HELOC is basically like a credit card secured by the equity in your home. It's revolving.
Meaning you can borrow, pay it back, borrow again, up to a set limit.
Exactly. Very flexible for things like renovations or down payments.
And then outside the banks, you've got private money and hard money. What's the difference, really?
The lines can be a bit blurry sometimes.
Yeah.
Generally, private money tends to mean loans from non-professionals. Think family, friends, maybe other wealthy individuals you know.
Okay.
Hard money usually refers to professional lending businesses that specialize in short-term asset-based loans. Often higher rates, quicker funding, used a lot for flips.
But the key takeaway for any of these options, HELOC, private hard money.
Shop around. Aggressively. Cannot stress this enough.
Why such a big emphasis? Don't most places offer similar rate?
Absolutely not. Especially for these more specialized products.
Yeah.
The rates, the fees, the terms, they can vary wildly. We're talking maybe as much as a 10% difference in the effective rate between lenders sometimes.
10%. On a decent-sized loan, say $100K for a rehab.
That 10% difference could mean tens of thousands of dollars in extra interest payments over just a few years.
Ouch. That's just money down the drain if you didn't take the time to compare offers.
Pure profit leakage. Which ties right back to that hustle mindset we talked about. Doing the work pays off.
Okay, shifting gears to analyzing a potential deal's profitability. The P&L, starting with GOI, gross operating income.
Right. GOI is step one. The basic formula is your total potential rent if every unit was full.
Growth potential rent.
Minus an allowance for vacancies and non-payment. That's rent loss. Plus any other income you get from the property. Laundry machines, parking fees, that kind of thing.
Pretty straightforward. But where do amateurs usually trip up?
underestimating the operating expenses. That's the big pitfall.
How so?
If you're looking at a deal, especially multifamily, and the seller, or maybe a syndicator, is projecting an expense ratio under 40% of the GOI, you need to raise a skeptical eyebrow immediately.
Why? What's a more realistic number?
For professionally managed properties, you're usually looking at 40% to 50%, maybe even higher for older buildings with more maintenance needs.
What specific expenses do people tend to forget or lowball?
Oh, lots. Turnover costs are huge. The cleaning, painting, minor repairs needed between tenants. People forget vacancy utilities. You pay the electric and water when the unit's empty.
Right.
Then there are things like specialized maintenance contracts, pools, landscaping, maybe administrative costs for processing applications, chasing down late rent. It all adds up very, very quickly. Easily pushes that ratio way past the optimistic 30%, someone might guess.
Good warning. Now, for quickly filtering deals, especially if you're wholesaling, the sources mention the 70% rule, mandatory knowledge.
Absolutely. It's a quick back-of-the-napkin tool to figure out your maximum allowable offer, your MAO.
And the formula is?
MAO, ARV by 0.70, repairs your fee.
Okay, ARV is after repair value times 70% minus estimated repair costs minus your wholesale fee. But why 70%? Where does that 30% buffer come from?
That 30% isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's the cushion that the end buyer, the professional investor, who's actually going to rehab and hold or flip the property, needs.
What does that cushion cover?
It has to absorb all the extra costs, acquisition costs, closing fees, holding costs while they renovate, insurance, taxes, utilities, financing costs, and crucially, it covers the unexpected stuff. The surprise repairs, maybe the market shifts slightly.
So if the initial margin is tighter than 30%,
the deal probably isn't strong enough for a flipper or landlord. It doesn't have enough room built in to handle the real-world friction and costs of doing business. It's too risky for them, meaning it's hard for you, the wholesaler, to sell.
Makes sense. Finally, in this section, due diligence. Using the financials to spot hidden physical problems.
Yeah, don't just look at the income side of the P&L. Dig into the expense patterns, too. They can tell you a story.
Give us an example. What's a financial red flag that points to a hidden issue?
Okay, a classic one is an unusually high water bill. Consistently high over several months or years.
What might that indicate?
Could be a hidden leak somewhere, underground supply line, maybe within the walls. Or, relatedly, if you see chronic high plumbing repair expenses listed year after year, that's not just a leaky faucet. If the seller spent, say, $10,000 on plumbing repairs over 3 years, that screams systemic problem. Maybe the main sewer line is failing. Something expensive hiding beneath the surface.
Good clue. And let's quickly revisit those syndication red flags. You mentioned the expense ratio. What about vacancy forecasts?
Right. If you're looking at a syndication deal and their financial projections show an economic vacancy rate that's actual lost rent below 8%, be very, very cautious. Maybe even run.
Why is 8% too low?
It's just super optimistic for most markets, most properties. When you realistically account for normal turnover between tenants, the time it takes to market and prep a unit, maybe the occasional tenant who stops paying, a 12% to 15% vacancy allowance is often much more appropriate for budgeting.
And understating vacancy makes the deal look better than it is.
Exactly. It artificially inflates the projected net operating income, NOI. So a deal that's just okay might look fantastic on paper. That low vacancy number, combined with a suspiciously low expense ratio, like under 40%, that's a sign the financial model might be built more on wishful thinking than on realistic assumptions.
Okay, part 3. This is where all that analysis meets the real world, the person sitting across the table from you. We're diving into negotiation tactics now, pulling a lot from behavioral psychology.
Right, and the first big principle is about cooperation, or at least the appearance of cooperation.
What do you mean?
Well, people who are really good at persuasion, compliance pros, they always try to frame things like you and the other party are on the same team, working towards the same goal.
Creating that teammate feeling.
Exactly. If you can shift the dynamic from buyer versus seller to us working together to get this transaction done, it dramatically lowers resistance. People are more agreeable with teammates.
Like the classic car salesman move, pretending to go battle his manager for you.
That's a perfect example. He positions himself as your ally against this tough, unseen authority figure. That psychological alignment builds rapport, which is crucial, especially if you need to deliver a tough message later, like a low offer.
Okay, cooperation principle. Next up, anchoring. The anchor and adjustment effect.
Yeah, this is a powerful cognitive bias. Once a number of the anchor gets put out there, our brains tend to latch onto it. All subsequent judgments and offers tend to adjust from that initial anchor, even if the anchor itself was kind of extreme or arbitrary.
So in a negotiation, you want to be the one to set the anchor, preferably low if you're buying.
Generally, yes. But you can't just throw out a crazy low number without justification. That might just insult the seller and kill the deal.
So how do you anchor effectively, especially with an extreme anchor?
The key is the anchor needs to feel plausible. It has to be tied to a story, to data.
For example,
If you're going in low, don't just say $250,000. Say, okay, based on the $30,000 estimate we got for the foundation repair and another $15,000 needed to update the electrical to code, we'd be looking at an offer around $250,000.
so you justify the low number with concrete reasons?
Exactly. When the anchor is backed by data, even if it's aggressive data, it sets a lower psychological starting point for the whole negotiation. It subtly bends the seller's perception of what's reasonable.
Interesting. And then there's maybe the simplest but hardest tactic, silence.
Oh yeah, listen more than you talk. The sources really emphasize this.
Why is silence so powerful?
Because it creates a vacuum, especially in tense moments, like right after an offer is made. People feel incredibly uncomfortable with silence. The natural urge is to fill it.
And they end up talking too much.
Often, yes. They start over-explaining, justifying their position, maybe revealing their motivations or constraints, hinting at their next move. Every extra word they say is potential intelligence for you, information you can use to craft your counteroffer or strategy. So just wait. Let them fill the silence.
Patience pays off. This leads nicely into the higher authority defense. You mentioned preserving cooperation while negotiating hard. How does this help?
Okay, think about perception. If you, the buyer, come across as successful, maybe look wealthy, the seller might see you as a rich shark. And then they feel perfectly justified digging in their heels for a high price. They think, oh, they can afford it. You become the bad guy, the antagonist.
But the higher authority tactic avoids that.
Yes. It shifts the blame away from you personally. You position yourself as someone who wants to make the deal work, an advocate even, but you're constrained by some external force, a party that isn't in the room and isn't flexible.
Like who?
Could be your business partner, your spouse, the investment committee, your hard money lender's strict underwriting criteria, your cash buyer who has firm limits.
So you'd say something like,
Look, I personally think your house is worth every penny of your asking price. It's beautiful. But unfortunately, my partner or my lender or my investment guidelines, they have a hard cap based on the repair costs we identify. They just won't approve funding above $280,000 for the purchase. I'm pushing them, believe me, but that's their absolute limit.
so you're still the good guy, the ally. The bad guy is this external authority.
Exactly. You maintain rapport with the seller while still holding firm on your number. Very effective.
Okay, let's switch to some specific contract and process points, things that get missed, like assuming an existing loan.
Yes, this is a huge one. Often overlooked even by title companies sometimes if they aren't used to investor deals.
That's the issue.
If a buyer takes over the property subject to the existing mortgage, meaning they just start making the payments, the critical step that often gets missed is getting the seller formally released from liability by the original lender.
So even though the seller sold the house, they could still be on the hook for the debt.
Absolutely. If the buyer stops paying down the road, the lender can potentially come after the original seller for the money unless they were formally released. It's a massive lingering risk for the seller.
Knowing that gives you leverage as a buyer.
It can, or at least it's a crucial protection point if you're the seller. Definitely something to clarify.
Okay, shifting to landlord-tenant stuff, a really simple rule. Always give receipts for rent.
Always. Even if they pay by check. Even if the tenant says, oh, my canceled check is my receipt. No.
Why be so strict?
Because the sources warn that not giving a clear, dated receipt invites more arguments than a poorly worded receipt. Simple as that.
Oh.
It prevents future disputes. The tenant can't later claim they paid in cash or they paid a different amount or on a different day. Having that receipt is clear proof that avoids headaches, especially if you ever end up in an eviction situation or just trying to balance your books. Small task, big prevention.
Makes sense. Now, a slightly darker tactic, sometimes used against landlords, especially during big rehabs or evictions, the accusation of harassment.
Yes, investors need to be aware of this. Harassment is a very loaded term.
How is it used tactically?
A tenant might claim harassment even if it's related to legitimate, legally required notices, standard maintenance, or lawful eviction proceedings, and that accusation itself can cause problems.
Like what kind of problems?
It can automatically trigger investigations by housing authorities. It might cause delays or denials for permits you need for renovations. And crucially, it can generate really bad press.
So the defense is?
Get impeccable documentation. Keep meticulous records of all communications, notices, work done. Prove that everything you did was by the book and legally compliant. Neutralize the accusation before it gains traction.
Okay. Back to the deal itself. For investors who might be a bit short on cash for closing, there's a maneuver involving closing costs.
Right. You can negotiate for the seller to pay more of the closing costs, things like title insurance, the appraisal fee, maybe your attorney's fees.
But the seller won't just agree to pay your bills for free.
No. Typically, you offer this in exchange for a slightly higher purchase price on the property.
So you finance those costs into the loan, essentially.
Exactly. It's the cash flow play. Your total loan amount is a bit bigger, but the amount of cash you need to bring to the closing table is significantly lower.
Which lets you keep more cash for the renovation. Or maybe just helps you get into the deal at all if funds are tight.
Precisely. And since, as we discussed, you might later refinance and pull equity out tax-free, paying a slightly higher price upfront to conserve cash now can be a smart strategic move.
Got it. One last specific warning, this one for short-term rentals, like Airbnb properties. Transferring future bookings.
Yeah, be very careful here. Sometimes when you buy an active STR, the seller might want to keep a percentage of the income from bookings they already secured, but that will happen after you own the place.
Take a commission for the bookings they handed over?
Kind of. The advice from the sources is crystal clear. Don't agree to this percentage split. It says this arrangement never ends well for the buyer.
Why not?
It just creates a mess. Accounting headaches, needing to constantly verify the income, potential disputes over revenue that can delay or complicate the closing, issues with escrow. It's just not worth the hassle.
So what's the alternative?
Either negotiate a one-time lump sum payment to the seller for those future bookings up front, or just refuse that structure altogether. Keep the closing clean.
All right, final section. We've covered mindset, money, negotiation. Now let's talk about the people and materials you need to actually execute the plan. Building your support system, your ecosystem.
Right. Especially for strategies like BRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Assembling that rock star team is arguably the highest leverage thing you can do.
More important than your own skills sometimes.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
The sources argue that having top talent on your team, a fantastic agent, a great lender who gets investors, a reliable contractor, a solid property manager, is more critical than you, the investor, knowing absolutely everything yourself.
You could theoretically be a mediocre analyst, but still crush it if your team is amazing.
You could. If they're finding the deals, getting the financing done smoothly, renovating efficiently, and managing tenants well, your weaknesses get covered. Talent on the team is paramount.
Okay, so finding that talent. How does a newer investor find a great lender, for example? One who truly understands investor loans, not just regular home mortgages.
Forget cold calling banks.
Yeah.
The best, simplest way. Ask top producing real estate agents in your market who they use and recommend.
Why agent?
Because top agents work with lenders constantly. They know who closes on time, who communicates well, who understands the nuances of investor financing like DSCR loans or portfolio loans. They see who performs under pressure.
And if an agent won't recommend a lender?
That could be a red flag about the agent, frankly. A good agent wants you to succeed and should have strong lender relationships. If they don't, maybe find a different agent who's more investor-focused.
Good tip. This idea of relationships extends to mentorship too, right? Invaluable, but needs the right approach.
Absolutely. Mentorships can accelerate your growth incredibly, but it has to be a two-way street, a value exchange.
Meaning the newbie can't just expect free guidance.
Right. You have to ditch what the sources call the entitlement attitude. A busy, successful investor isn't just lucky to get to mentor you. You need to figure out how you bring value to them.
What kind of value could a newbie bring?
Could be knowledge. Maybe you're great at deep diving market research they don't have time for. Could be time handling administrative tasks, screening calls. Could be hustle driving neighborhoods looking for deals, making cold calls they wouldn't make.
So you earn the mentorship.
Essentially, yes. It needs to evolve organically, ideally, into more of a friendship built on mutual respect and contribution, not just a one-sided information drip.
Okay, shifting from people to the physical stuff, renovations, flooring choices and rentals seem like a constant debate. Durability versus cost versus looks.
It's a classic triangle you're trying to balance.
Yeah.
The sources break down the main options pretty clearly.
Lay it out for us.
Okay, carpet. It's the cheapest up front, but it wears out the fastest, holds smells, stains easily, lowest durability, highest turnover cost in the long run.
Wow.
Real hardwood looks fantastic, commands higher rent maybe, but it's easily damaged. Scratches, water damage from spills or pets can be a nightmare in a rental. Expensive too. Tile is king for durability, almost indestructible, great for wet areas like kitchens and baths. But the material cost is high, and the installation labor is very expensive and time-consuming.
But that leaves
Laminate flooring. Often, it hits the sweet spot, the happy medium.
pre-laminate.
It looks much better and is way more durable than carpet. It handles moisture much better than real wood. It's relatively inexpensive to buy. And big factor, it's usually pretty easy and fast to install, which keeps your labor costs down.
So for most rental situations, laminate offers the best overall balance.
For a lot of standard rental portfolios, yes. It gives you good longevity, decent aesthetics, and reasonable cost efficiency.
Makes sense. Okay, final topic. Zooming way out, real estate cycles and understanding market demand.
Crucial big picture stuff. The basic principle to remember is that buyers drive markets, and rent prices tend to follow home prices, usually with a bit of a lag.
So you need to learn how to spot where the demand is heading before it's obvious to everyone.
Exactly. You need to develop an eye for the leading indicators of an up-and-coming area or a market with sustained high demand.
What are those key indicators?
Look for clear signs of growing employment. Are new companies moving into the area? Are major existing employers expanding and hiring? Jobs are fundamental.
What else?
Look at the listing data. Low days on market, DOM, means houses are selling quickly. That signals strong buyer competition and urgency.
And physical signs.
Yeah, drive around. Are you seeing lots of construction cranes downtown? New commercial development? That shows capital investment and confidence in the area's future.
And the sources mention one more often overlooked factor, barriers to entry.
Right, this is important. Are there geographic barriers that limit sprawl? Like mountains, oceans, maybe large national parks surrounding the area? Or are there economic or political barriers? Strict zoning laws that make it hard to build new housing? Limited land available for development?
How do those barriers impact demand?
They essentially concentrate the existing and future demand into a smaller area. They prevent supply from easily expanding to meet rising demand. This compression effect tends to accelerate price appreciation and rent growth. So markets with strong barriers to entry often see faster, more sustained growth. It's a key sign of a potentially strong long-term investment area. Hashtag outro.
Wow, what an incredibly detailed deep dive today. We really covered a huge amount of ground, didn't we?
We did. Pulled together threads from finance, psychology, law, all focused on that professional edge in real estate.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me, the ultimate lesson, is that success in this game, it's not just luck. It's not about timing the market perfectly or just being aggressive.
No, it's much more deliberate than that.
It's really the result of, well, everything we discussed. Strategic preparation, knowing your numbers inside out financial fluency, and understanding the human element, that psychological mastery in negotiations.
And we absolutely have to circle back to where we started, that concept of identity and behavior mismatch.
Right. The inner game dictates the outer results.
It really does. Your external world, the deals you do, the wealth you build it, tends to mirror your internal world. It only really improves after you've done the work to upgrade your own internal operating system, your beliefs.
So if you're listening and you desire more wealth or maybe better health or more success in any area, but your deep down identity, how you really see yourself, is still maybe someone who consumes first or someone who always chooses immediate comfort over long-term effort.
Then your default actions are going to keep pulling you back.
Yeah.
Towards spending, towards putting things off, towards distraction. Your behavior will follow that underlying identity.
So the final thought to leave everyone with today, after hearing all this, the data on efficiency, the power of leverage, the tactics for negotiation, what's the one core belief about yourself? Maybe a limiting one.
Yeah, what's that belief you're going to consciously challenge and start reprogramming starting today so that your actions finally truly line up with your ambitions, that deeper identity work? That might just be the real hidden key to becoming a truly professional deal maker.